Hello everybody, welcome to Primus. This is our program B for Belarus with our beloved Vladimir Baranich. Volodya, hello.
Hi.
Vlad is a country consultant and media analyst, and today we are having our program on the issue or theme Belarusians in the mirror of holidays and rituals, why Belarusians look for something that does not exist. And by the thing that does not exist, I mean fern flower, which traditionally Belarusians search for on the 6th of July. What is this phenomenon about? Why do Belarusians so full of mysticism, of these barbarian traditions that go back to pre-Christian times?
That's the key. It goes back to pre-Christian times because Belarusians, as we already mentioned in our first program and further on, that mostly peasants, and peasants are just the concentration of all those old habits and traditions of superstitions, etc. In this respect, remember, I was just making a pun, a joke about this Africa, the center of Europe. In this case, I probably would say it's kind of more Latin America with their syncretic faith. Is actually a religion which is a mixture of Catholicism and all those Indian tribal pagan faith and beliefs, etc. Here we have since peasants, I just remember well my grandmother, she lived in the village, and I remember what she believed in. Well, people, actually not she only, but other people, they formally, she had an icon, an Orthodox icon in the corner, and people would observe all those traditions as they do now. But at the same time, they would believe in some witchcraft, in such things like cursing on purpose. Fortune telling, maybe not. It's more like gypsy culture, but and it's more. Actually, we didn't have this fortune telling in our culture, but it was pagan religion in its pure form, because Belarusians with that we'd say pre-Christian times, they would believe in these idols, which were gods of the forest, of the river, etc. So these nature gods, they probably very similar to those beliefs of those.
Okay, that's one thing when you do that on the household level or you among friends. But another thing is that we have this Kupala holiday, which is on the 6th of July, which essentially in the center is fern flower. The fern is the plant that never blossoms, and in this case the whole thing is in the following way: we do not search for truth, for science, for some fact, for some harmony in the real life. We believe that we should look for something that is our imagination, is part of the mystery, and in this case we it's our also way to escape reality, not to face it. And it's like in all other holidays that we have, right? Like we had the holiday dedicated to the Second World War, to European Games, to Independence Days, to the liberation of Minsk, to all these things, right? And you always find there's kind of a gap between what really happened in reality, like on the 3rd of July, right? The liberation of Minsk, not liberation of the whole country, but still we celebrate 4th of July as an Independence Day of the whole country, while independence was declared in a different day.
Actually, two different days.
Yes. Right? And that's kind of the thing, is that we put red letter days on the calendar, which are different from what happened in reality. So we adjust the way we celebrate holidays to what? Wishful thinking, to what nomenclature wants, or what?
Well, again, that's why I mentioned they gave such a long introductory,
long introduction, right?
Introduction into the peasants' history, because peasants they many times I at least would tell about this, that our people they have this strong peasant heritage, and they behave like, though there is a saying that you can bring the peasant into the city, but you can't bring the village out of the peasant, something like that. So although they take high positions, etc., but their faith is again superstition, and it's not like our president. He says that he is Orthodox believer, but Orthodox atheist. So it's like oxymoronic, but he does believe that it's like culturally he's Orthodox, but and he supports the Orthodox Church, and but at the same time he is not believer, he's atheist. So it's kind of.
I think that's his. In the mind of a Belarusian, you have a mixture, a fusion of different ideas, different approaches, and I think if you ask why you celebrate, of course in a joking way, why this fern flower search or this holiday, nobody would say exactly what it means. It's like when with the holiday is like 8th of March. Okay, it's Women's Day. Everybody loves women. Everybody celebrates them. Everybody gives them flowers, gifts, some attention, and everybody. It's kind of pretty direct. It's different with Independence Day. It's different with with war holidays and with religious holidays. Like everybody, like when people ask, are you a Russian Orthodox, Catholic, or Jewish? About 80% of Belarusians identify themselves as Russian Orthodox, but 12% of people go to church. For them, being Russian Orthodox is part of, okay, I am, as you say, white, I'm European, I am walking, I walk on 2 feet, on 2 legs, and that's it. So it doesn't bring any religious connotation.
Well, again, that's why I say that this, all this attitude, we talk about the paradigm of so-called the pattern. When I mentioned the president is he's on the top of this iceberg, so he's more visible, but the same attitude is everywhere. Like the exception maybe 10% who are true believers in their faith in its Orthodox, in true form, so to say. Talking about, so we see this pagan attitude. So the holidays, these events or something, in every religion, holiday is important part of
the rituals,
the cult of a certain god,
of life arrangement in general.
Yes, and here we have god of they call this not World War II, they call it Great Patriotic War. So you see the very name comes from the Soviet times,
which has a different beginning and different end.
It gives absolutely different meaning. The Great Patriotic War, it's holy war, holy war. It's like crusade against pagan and infidels and
fascist Nazis.
So we have to approach this culturally as these celebrations, military parades with all these,
tanks, rockets, just military force,
with all these expenditures, which huge money comes to these efforts, human efforts, these preparations, etc. And even they break asphalt on the streets with tanks, etc. And this is a cult of a god of this great patriotic war.
They say in order to mold a nation, you should bring costs, you should pay for that. And some people argue that in order to to enhance patriotism, you must see rockets, planes, military force. It's like showing off in a way, right? You don't show off with your brain power, you don't show off with ideas.
Well,
but this is what like barbarians and pagans firstly did.
Sure.
They have this even in ancient Rome, Colosseum, brute power, brute power, force, blood, destruction.
And talking about blood, you see, every god sooner or later would require human sacrifices. And this year we had this accident which exploded this firework. This which was installation or which was gun or whatever they call it. It exploded and one woman was killed and some other people, but she was killed actually in a very bloody way. Her throat was cut.
It's an accident,
and,
of course.
It's typical, culturally, it's typical blood offering of a pagan god.
No, but you exaggerate because that was an accident, bad accident.
Well, maybe it's a coincidence, but it's too clear.
It wasn't aimed to. So it was like in Maya civilizations, and you like to.
Being a scholar, according to my education, remember, I was once Americanist. I was teaching American literature at the university, and so I like vivid images.
That's right. So it's a more literary approach to describing our reality than actual or analytical approach. But in this case, how do you explain this phenomenon of why did the authorities change the date of the holiday, of the key holiday in the country, which is Independence Day, 3rd of July? And you see, when in the beginning of May we enter this flow of military war, news, propaganda, information, movies, documentaries, everything about war. And until 3rd of July, the whole country, like more than 2 months, we live in this war rhetoric.
Epics. 3 of July.
Epics. That's right.
War cult.
Does it make us more patriotic? Does it make Belarusians more Belarusians in a way?
I remember when we were standing in these airplanes, were flying with a roar and great noise. This before they were rehearsing the parade,
right? And
I would say, well, there call us Nick's toys are flying. This president's son. Well, actually, this military is in modern. If you read, specialists and with just bare eyes, you can see this is outdated. Obsolete military machine which wouldn't stand an hour against American drones, something like.
No, but that's not about real battle. Who thinks in terms of if we are attacked by some foreign power, aliens, and all these our army, our soldiers, brave hearts and tanks and rockets will be able to protect us for 17 minutes until we all die, right? It's not the same. It's not like we have the army and all these rituals to enhance any intangible assets we have, like reputation, like branding, like the spirit of the nation. We don't care about the spirit in this way. We care about some preserving some rituals, as you said, which go back to either Soviet ideological times or pre-barbarian times.
Here is actually first comes this paradigm of pre-barbarian times with this everything which people believe they brought from their villages, this pagan faith. But you put very important question, why 3rd of July, and why why they changed that from other historical dates when independence was formally announced. Well, that's very simple because current president he tries to rewrite history where he's an important part of it. Like remember he was announcing to his to veterans, someone said it was that his father died during the war.
Rewriting history means falsifying it. Inevitably.
Not really falsifying. We don't see a falsification here in its pure form. It's just playing with it, just tricking it into even just trying to use it for a certain purpose. That
but the purpose
Belarus
is
begins, right. The history of Belarus is the history of Soviet Belarusia, which begins after the World War II, after the Great Patriotic War. And according to this ruling regime in Belarus was the center of this war. They played even more important role than Russians. Those Russians who I know, they're analysts in Moscow, they say that Belarus tries to privatize this military history of which belongs to Russia, as they think, because that the war was won not by Soviet Union but by Belarus, and because you see everything is, and that's why when this war parade and everything, it comes initially to the current ruling class.
This current ruling class is trying to describe the past in a very hand-picked way, right? Like when you explore the whole true history, how the whole thing began, how Stalin behaved, how many times he was informed by spies, by even Germans who ran to Russians to warn against the war, the way the Russian Soviet army prepared for the invasion, and there are a lot of evidence about it. And again,
Icebreaker by Razun Suvorov.
It's very tons of facts. And again, what kind of this 22nd of June, quite unexpectedly.
Yes.
What kind of unexpectedly? So all to be expected. The way that Stalin behaved that time was treachery, like treason, I believe, and nobody, just few people know about it, but the official propaganda does not just drop this fact. Or like Stalin line in Belarus, we have the Stalin line that never existed, and historians say, how could you teach history based on fake installations?
You see, the problem with history, I have the problem with history. I always make professional historians angry, although I'm sort of historian myself, because I was historian of world literature. But I say that history is a quasi or false science, because, quasi science, I would say, because they interpret facts. They take facts, for example, there is archaeological fact, there is artifact, and there is some archive fact, digged somewhere in the library or whatever. So, but historians, they interpret. It's like I could take the same date and interpret it in a way which ideology demands. So everything here with all this, let's say, religion of the war, of Great Patriotic War,
but here
is about religion.
We see fact dropping. We have facts, and they are, if facts don't match this official picture, they are omitted. And that's with Stalin line. If people were told, you see the installation which was erected because leadership of the country wanted it to do so. Like this is that it aims to teach you guys patriotism and love to your own country. This is one thing, but another thing is when you have castles. Right, we don't erect castles right now, saying that they were built 200 years or 300 years ago, because that's ridiculous.
Well, again, I again repeat that it's all about religion. The religion, for example, if you take religion, any religion, like ancient Rome, ancient Greece, then other like Holy Roman Empire in Europe, or Russian Empire, no matter. I mean, I talk about despotism, about regimes which are built on not on democratic values, but like these old-style monarchies, and they all needed support of religion, and the religion was the stronghold of the ideal. It was kind of the main ideology. Now ideology is kind of religion, which supports current regime. I mean, regime in neutral term. I don't say it's bad or good, but I say that they need some ideology which comes from the Soviet times and current regime.
That's why
claims the heritage of the Soviet past.
Well, look, the thing is that right now we do not have like pure religion, pure ideology, pure communism. We have fusion. Fusion is
yes.
like, and that's a mixture, like a salad, and different politicians, different rulers handpick whatever they want and to prefer. Like, for example, in the near future, Lukashenko and Putin are meeting in Balaam against a Russian Orthodox sacred place.
It creates them image of
so they
saint people.
Meeting in an office to talk shop, to discuss current issues and to solve them is not enough. They need mystery. Sure. They need crosses. They need
magic.
Priests around to appeal to like things that go beyond our imagination and knowledge for the future. Like, what is your sacred mission? What's your vision? What's your crusade? And so that's a dangerous situation when presidents, prime ministers, they do not ground their thoughts on facts, on economic calculation, on property rights and anything, but on mysticism. So that it's so widespread that it is accepted almost as a norm in our relations.
Well, because it comes back again to popular acceptance of popular view on the world. It's people are very superstitious, although they don't believe in some official religion or in some particular god, but they think, oh yes, there is something. Like for example, when they were removing all those crosses in Kuropatty, this famous place, and most people would say, oh, God will punish them for that. Although physically, I mean, if you take Bible, there is nothing about it. Just these objects actually, Bible forbids to worship those objects. And so, from the point of pure religion, they did nothing wrong.
Interpretation, right?
But for people who perceive all this as God for them is something like Zeus, and so to propitiate him you have to worship or put idols of. So this kind of they just removed idols, so they worship idols. They erect all these idols and all this cult of this military glorious past. It's glorifying. It's sort of kind of in religion. It's religion myth, or how to call it. So
I understand, but it's one thing. So we are talking about penetration of religion into different kinds of rituals that exist both in politics, in real life, in business, and then again, it's for me the kind of the
it's irrational. It's
highlight of this kind of irrationality is in the way when Roscosmos, which deals with space and science and the physics, they have their own priest.
Oh yes, and actually once I remember a funny story when their satellite, something wrong, it just was misfunctioned and was burned in the atmosphere. Their priest said that it was an act of demons, so they just cut it down. And
it's such a good explanation. And what happened? Why didn't you deliver? Well, demons prevented me from doing that. Yes. Demons in the form of opposition, demons in the form of atheists, demons in the form of the people who know foreign languages. So that's again, so from this statement to another step, how to neutralize demons.
Oh, yeah, to burn them. Yes, they're witches. They're witches. Those who promote demons. I mean, it's opposition. Well, fortunately, they no longer
independent
burn them
media, bloggers, people who are popular in social networks must be isolated.
Or those who, like us, preach, these libertarian ideas, because you can't imagine, I can't imagine if we had libertarian government now in power who would do such stupid things and waste money on this, let's say, religious ceremonies.
It's again, we should state that the church and state must be separated. That's a basic principle of functioning a civilized government, civilized country right now. And again, our libertarian principle is that the state and business must be separated.
If you want to worship,
government's role is absolutely different, not to produce things, but to ensure the conditions where people can compete and produce what they want.
Of course, if somebody wants to worship oak's log, let him do it in the forest, or whatever. Or tank, or airplane, or I don't know, whatever they want to worship. That's their own business.
Volodya, from your perspective, why do you think science is such in big disrespect today? Because we talk about, again, different forms of paganism, mysticism, escape from reality. Science is difficult to fathom, difficult to study. It needs industriousness, it needs perseverance, it needs consistency, and it requires you to be honest with yourself. If science brings you about facts that conflict with your values that were formed based on partial or incorrect information, you must adjust to what science says. That refers, for example, to what we know about GMO food, about global warming, about robots, about artificial intelligence. So that means that...
And even aliens.
Whatever. If I meet an alien and he says, well, I'm from a planet of dogs and cats, well, good. Unless
for you,
I'm fine as long as he respects my property and my privacy right. So why is that in the end of the 2010th, in the 21st century, we're facing the issues that were kind of widespread before the Enlightenment era?
It's again our very our favorite slogan. Remember our favorite slogan: "Think it is not painful."
Think it's not painful. Mm-hmm.
So thinking for such people, probably it is painful. Maybe it is painful not as physically, but morally, and it creates certain discomfort because it comes because science in its pure form. I don't mean some quasi science, but real science, which is proved by facts, which you can prove. With formulas, etc. And when it comes against their faith, their religion, let's name it spade a spade, it creates certain inner conflict. And to avoid it, it's easier to remove science from this equation.
Right.
That's why. And again, it's a scale of values. What is more important for people? If you ask them, just straightforwardly, what is the most important thing in life? How do you think?
Family, and then you have divorce rate 50%.
Very few people.
Children.
Very few people would say liberty.
Very few.
Very few people. But liberty is something which really brings people to fulfillment.
That's right.
Actually, it's in the Bible.
No, but Volodya, for people who are hardworking, who value honesty, who value property, who essentially who base their relations with others on free voluntary exchange. But if your approach to life is that I am a boss and you owe me whatever you have, or half of what you have, or if I'm a government official and then you're my slave, then there's the different approach. So then you want to be a master in order to enslave all the rest and live at the expense of others.
Here we came to the very core and the very answer of what we're talking about this pagan faith, because it deprives people of liberty, and it enforces slavery, which is very very convenient for those who rule them. They can, rob them of national resources on a big scale, or exploit them without any social responsibility, etc., etc. Like they throwing heaps of money on these parades, etc. But again, those companies who stand there, private companies who, for example, make asphalt. Of course, after this parade, they will have a lot of money spent on repairing this asphalt. And we'll see more new fashionable cars and mansions outside Minsk, or new flats being built, again, on this money. And ordinary people who are slaves or serfs, in this modern form, how we have it without liberty. Because, see, again, when we talk about libertarian view, there is root word liberty.
Liberty, right? Of course.
Libertarian means liberty.
Self-ownership, non-aggression principles.
Liberty was the aspiration of all generations everywhere. Like the United States was built on liberty.
Yep,
if you say
exactly.
French Revolution, again, liberty. And you see Rome everywhere. People were fighting for liberty, and liberty
dying for liberty.
Only in
cherishing liberty.
In countries with liberty, they would have progress. I mean, historical progress, industrial progress.
We have data on the last 40 years. Cato Institute, Fraser Institute from Canada, they analyzed the impact of economic freedom on prosperity, on economic growth, equality, you name it. And it's always the most economically free countries grow faster, they're more sustainable, they abolish poverty quicker, they have better environment. So essentially the message is that Belarusians, when they attach their kind of values and time to barbarianism, to paganism, to mystery, they don't have enough time to focus on liberty, to understand it, to respect it, to build their lives based on this principle, because as propagandists, ideologues say, liberty is just anarchy. Do whatever you want at any time, and that means without any responsibility.
You see, liberty, and it's like ideal form, we call it about, because we say our other word is freedom in English. In Russian, it's the same word.
Yeah, the same word. Right.
But here we have this freedom of choice. It's painful for some people. Freedom, actually, for slaves, it's more convenient to be under state of slavery, because you don't have to think about what to do. You're just ordered to. You're provided with basic needs.
But that's why we have, unfortunately, though formally serfdom was abolished in the 19th century, but serfdom is a voluntary choice for many Belarusians still in the 21st century. That's when we are paid, our pensions are paid by the president.
Yes.
Our government delivers. Yes. It's not that you succeeded in business, that's you were given a chance by the government and bureaucrats to be successful in business. So it's always the emphasis is on the government, on the permission that you are you were lucky, you were in the right place with the right idea, with the right connections, that's why you succeeded. It's not that you as an individual managed to resources in the way to create a fortune or to create good business or to create good intangible assets. That's the point. So that's a serfdom means dependence on Leviathan, that the government should arrange free delivery of education and healthcare. The government should deliver labor,
anything which is good,
protection, cheap housing, everything. So when you want the government to deliver something cheap or free of charge, then that's part of your serf mentality.
Again, here why these military parades are. They say, well, if not our army, or if not our government, you would be enslaved by NATO, by Americans,
aliens, by whatever, and we need this money.
I remember when
give us your resources, your money, your lives, your sons to serve in the army. Otherwise, we'll be dead.
Although Americans, good friend of mine, Don Coder, I once mentioned him. He lived here, and he said, well, why are they afraid of Americans? Where Americans come, there's money, big bucks comes in. It brings prosperity.
Americans, unfortunately, 95% of them don't even know that such a country as Belarus exists.
Yes, but that's what he meant. He's American, right. And he said, well, we bring money. Wherever we go, we bring money.
All right, so let's conclude that Belarusians, in the mirror of holidays and rituals, are barbarians, are serfs, are pagans. They look for something mysterious because they have a low level of self-esteem. They don't respect themselves. They are too lazy to invest in science and their own education and knowledge. And as a result, they try to live like in the swamp, swamp people that with covering their weirdness with national peculiarities.
Right.
That's how the way Belarusians are.
Unfortunately.
Essentially, we
Sadly,
of course, we try to exaggerate at some points, but essentially, what Volodya and I are describing our observations. And if you want to fully grasp the picture of what Belarusians are, listen to all our programs. We'll elaborate on other issues so that you better understand why people in this country make such decisions, not others.
Right.
Okay, thank you, Volodya, for your input, for the participation in the program, for the interesting issues that you put up. Let me remind you that Vladimir Baranich is a country consultant and media analyst in the program B for Belarus. Stay with us, read, go to the website Volodya manages, expat.by. You'll find many more interesting materials about us, about Belarusians, and if you have any questions, please ask them so that we can provide you with our subjective subjective evaluations of what we consider. Please do not take that for granted as a scholarly analyst. This is the program to infotain you guys.
It's a freak show, actually.
Right. Okay, thank you. See you next time. Goodbye.
Goodbye.